Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into an absolutely epic cosmic struggle today. We're talking about the deep conflict between God's perfect original order and, well, the sheer chaos of the world we see around us. But more importantly, we're going to unpack how the source material positions the cross as the ultimate, absolutely essential mechanism for restoring all that lost order. It's a truly fascinating look at history, spirituality, and human nature. So let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at God's perfect original order. Then, the roots of chaos, the power of the cross, ending the old way, and finally, restoring harmony and unity.
Starting right at the very beginning with Section 1, God's perfect original order, or what the text beautifully calls the Song of Creation. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at the big picture on this cosmic timeline. We start at point 1, a state of perfect harmony in order. Then we plummet right into point 2, human history, which is just characterized by rebellion, division, and chaos. Point 3 is the pivotal intervention, the cross. And then point 4 points us toward eternity, where complete unity is finally achieved. Keep this map in the back of your mind as we go through this.
You know, the source points back to the book of Job to paint this picture of the beginning. God asks, "Where were you when the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy?" The universe literally started with a perfect, unified harmony. I love how the author uses the metaphor of music here. Before time as we know it, creation was like a flawless symphony without a single discordant note. Everything was just perfectly in its place.
But, of course, that perfect order didn't last. Which brings us to Section 2, the roots of chaos, subtitled The Discordant Note.
So what exactly was that discordant note? Well, the text boils it down to one single rebellious attitude. On one hand, you have this core philosophy of I will, basically putting self-ego and personal desires above absolutely everything else. And that stands in total contrast to Christ's core philosophy of ultimate submission. Not my will, but yours be done. The text makes the case that this self-centered I will is the literal root of all the chaos we experience. And you can see how this builds, right? This rebellious I will didn't just stay in some abstract spiritual realm. It acted like a virus. Look at step 1. It infected humanity by creating inner division right inside the human heart. We became conflicted. Then, step 2, that inner selfishness spilled outward, fracturing our marriages and our homes. And finally, step 3, it spread globally, resulting in all the societal chaos, division, and conflict we see throughout history. It's a literal step-by-step breakdown of order.
Because of this massive separation from God's perfect environment, the text explains that the whole of creation is now just stuck in a state of deep frustration. It's literally groaning for restoration. And the author makes a really fascinating point here. Because we're operating in this broken system, even our best human attempts to fix the world, our greatest societal progress or our coolest new technologies, they often just end up breeding entirely new problems. We're caught in this exhausting cycle of frustration.
Human effort just isn't enough to break that cycle. And that brings us to Section 3, the power of the cross and the ultimate intervention.
Here's where things get really interesting. The source redefines a word we all think we know: salvation. When Jesus asks a sick man, "Do you want to get well?" the text points out that the word used there is the exact same root word for salvation. So it isn't just about, getting a ticket to the afterlife. It literally means to get well, to be made whole, and, this is crucial, to be put back into proper order. It's all about fixing that deep structural chaos.
And this brilliant perspective just keeps going with the word atonement. If you break the word down, it's literally at one mit, making one again. The source heavily emphasizes that the cross actively heals the deep divisions caused by our human self-will, basically gathering up and bringing back together the fragmented pieces of society.
This whole concept is perfectly captured in John 12:32. I, when I'm lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. The text argues that by being lifted up on the cross, Jesus essentially introduced a massive magnetic spiritual power into the world. It's a power specifically designed to reverse that spread of chaos, pulling all those fractured, divided pieces of humanity back together into one unified whole.
But before that new unified order can be fully established, something else has to happen. Let's move to Section 4, ending the old way and the finished system.
Okay, quick puzzle for you to get us thinking. Based on the ancient narratives referenced in the text, what do the prophet Jonah inside a giant fish, the hours of darkness during the crucifixion, the languages written on a sign, and the days spent in an empty tomb all have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup to a pretty strange joke, but the answer actually ties everything together.
Yep, it's the number 3. Jonah spent 3 days in the fish, there were 3 hours of darkness, 3 languages on the cross, and 3 days in the tomb. So why does this matter? Well, in ancient literary context, the number 3 repeatedly represents absolute completeness. The author's crucial point here is that this mechanism brought a total, absolute end to the old chaotic system of sin. It is entirely 100% finished.
To really visualize how this old system ended, consider this stark contrast. On one side, you have the closed heaven, this long era of separation, no connection, and no blessing, which was physically represented in the ancient temple by a massive, heavy curtain blocking the presence of God. But on the flip side, the text notes that when the cross happened, that exact curtain was physically torn straight down the middle from top to bottom. The era of the closed heaven was definitively over. Direct access and restored connection were completely established.
With the old system totally finished, we arrive at our final section. Section 5, Restoring Harmony and Unity, or what the text beautifully calls the Song of Redemption.
Now, the author makes it crystal clear that this isn't just ancient history. This is presented as a highly dynamic mechanism at work in our lives today. The text argues the cross actively stops the spread of division, which it actually compares to a spiritual leprosy. It defeats that selfish I will of human nature, replacing it with a totally new center. And practically speaking, it brings actual peace to our marriages, our communities, and completely clears our human conscience. A real game changer.
Which leads us to the grand finale, captured in Revelation 7:9, a great multitude from every nation, tribe, people, and language all standing together. Remember that song of creation we started with? The text brings us full circle right here to the song of redemption. That discordant note of selfishness is completely gone and perfect harmony is restored among all people. God's original order is finally achieved once again. So here's the ultimate question the source material leaves us wrestling with. Are you still singing that discordant note of I will, insisting on your own way and just contributing to the chaos of the world? Or will you let this mechanism of the cross restore perfect order in your own life? It's a really profound challenge to chew on. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.